On April 26, 1986, the worst nuclear disaster in history occurred during a safety test of a nuclear reactor at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Ukraine. There are many legends around Europe about Chernobyl mutants, radioactive animals, and other strange things that were caused by the disaster. There is no evidence of new or unknown species arising as a result of the disaster. The Black Bird of Chernobyl. In April of 1986, people around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant began to experience a series of disturbing events revolving around sightings of a mysterious creature described as a large, mutated man with huge wings and glowing red eyes. People who worked and lived around the plant received strange phone calls in the days leading up to the disaster. Many had nightmares, and there were numerous reports of people who claimed to have witnessed a humanoid figure flying over the reactor. The description of the figure is eerily similar to that of the Mothman encounters in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It is theorized that, like the Mothman, the Black Bird of Chernobyl served as an omen of doom, warning the workers of the lethal radiation within the plant. The Chernobyl sarcophagus is the massive concrete and steel structure that was built to contain the damaged reactor at Chernobyl. According to some legends, the structure is cursed and contains the souls of the workers who died in the disaster. The Chernobyl wolves. Some people believe the radiation from the disaster caused the local wolf population to mutate and become more aggressive. There are also rumors that some of these wolves may have glowing eyes and other unusual features. The ghost city of Pripyat was a city that was originally built to house the workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. When the disaster occurred, the city was evacuated, and it has since become a ghost town. Some people claim to have seen ghostly figures wandering the streets, leading some to believe that it is haunted by the ghosts of the people who once lived there. The Chernobyl liquidators were the first responders who risked their lives to contain the horrific disaster. Some people believe that the spirits of these brave men and women still linger in the area, and that they can be seen wandering the abandoned buildings and streets of the exclusion zone. Others see shadow people. Many visitors of the exclusion zone have reported seeing shadowy figures moving around the abandoned buildings. These figures are often described as human-like, but without any discernible features. There are many conspiracy theories surrounding the Chernobyl disaster. Here are some of the most common and the ones I think that are the most believable. Sabotage by foreign agents. Some people believe that the disaster was caused by foreign agents who wanted to damage the Soviet Union's nuclear capabilities. This theory suggests that the disaster was not an accident, but rather a deliberate act of sabotage. Others believe that the Soviet government covered up the true extent of the disaster in order to avoid negative publicity and criticism on the world stage. This theory suggests that the government downplayed the severity of the disaster and failed to provide adequate support and resources to the affected population. While some believe that the health effects of the disaster were exaggerated in order to promote anti-nuclear sentiment and discourage the use of nuclear power, this theory suggests that the actual health effects were not as severe as first reported and that the disaster has been used as a tool of propaganda. There are some who think the Chernobyl disaster was actually a covert nuclear weapons test by the Soviet Union. This theory suggests that the explosion was not an accident, but rather a deliberate test of a new type of nuclear warhead. Here are some facts that you can't hide. 31 people were directly killed by the accident when it happened, but as many as 500,000 people in the surrounding area were exposed to radon and air pollution from the disaster. Some put the actual death toll of anywhere between 4,000 to 90,000 people who may have died prematurely from being within the exposed area. It was the worst nuclear power plant disaster in both terms of casualties and cost. It is estimated that the accident cost the Soviet Union up to $68 billion in today's money, and it took over 1 million workers to fully contain and secure the area around the site over the following years. There was a 90% increase in childhood cancer in the first 5 years after the accident in Ukraine, mainly thyroid cancer that also affected children in the surrounding countries of Russia and Belarus. Over time, the long-term health effects of the disaster have continued to impact the population in the affected area, with estimates of the numbers of deaths related to the disaster ranging from a few thousand to tens of thousands. The exact number is difficult to determine due to the long-term and widespread nature of the deaths. In addition to the human toll, the disaster had significant environmental and economic impacts in the region. including the loss of agricultural land and the forced resettlement of thousands of people. Overall, the exact number of deaths and injuries resulting from the Chernobyl disaster is difficult to determine, but it is clear that the disaster had a significant and lasting impact on the health and well-being of many people in the affected area. The Chernobyl exclusion zone is an area of approximately 2,600 square kilometers, or 1,000 square miles, around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in northern Ukraine. It was established in 1986 after the nuclear disaster to restrict access to the area and limit exposure to radiation. The zone is still in place today, and the area remains largely uninhabited. You can legally visit the exclusion zone around the Chernobyl site and take a tour, but you can't live there. At least 100 to 150 people illegally live in the area, mostly old women who are still farming and caring for the land that had been in their family for centuries. Visitors must obtain a permit and be accompanied by a licensed tour guide. The tours generally focus on the abandoned town of Pripyat and the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and may also include visits to other locations within the exclusion zone. Visitors are required to follow strict safety protocols, including wearing protective clothing and staying within designated areas to limit exposure to radiation. The tours are popular among tourists interested in history and the paranormal, as well as scientists and researchers studying the effects of the disaster on the environment and wildlife. However, it is important to note that the Chernobyl exclusion zone is still an active cleanup and monitoring site, and access to some areas may be restricted for safety reasons. Strangers, would you visit the exclusion zone? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, it helps me out a lot. If you're new, subscribe, ring the bell button so you never miss out on a video. And as always, stay strange.